Let's get more on the state of the war and international support for Ukraine now. I have two guests with me tonight. Liana Fix, Fellow for Europe at the Council on Foreign Relations, and Kori Schake, Senior Fellow and Director of Foreign and Defense Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. Good evening to you both. It's great to have you on BBC News. And Kori, I want to start with you because we heard Ambassador Bill Taylor say a little bit earlier that he thinks Volodymyr Zelensky was able to make his case on Capitol Hill in Washington this week. But we know there is still skepticism among House Republicans. And Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy said he would remove the $300 million for Ukraine currently in the Pentagon appropriations bill because of opposition. So would you say that President Zelensky's visit was successful?
Yes, I would. It sounds like the President of the United States committed to continuing weaponry to Ukraine, including the possibility of ATACMS longer-range missiles, and to other things important to Ukraine. You know, it's the president's job to deliver Congress on this. And President Zelensky came to Washington on a particularly difficult week where the House of Representatives are struggling to try and get the consensus to pass a spending bill. So I'm not surprised either that the Speaker of the House asked not for a major international event in the House of Representatives, or that he's turning keys in locks trying to find the votes, whether that is appointing a special inspector to root out any potential corruption and to reassure Americans that the support that we're giving is going to the things Ukraine genuinely needs, or whether it's private meetings without big public fanfare, because getting the federal budget passed is actually important for Ukraine as well as for the United States.
Yeah, that's right. You're right, Kori. There is a lot going on Capitol Hill this week. But Liana, I want to get your take on this very same question. That did seem to be more of a difficult visit this time for President Zelensky.
It's not only this visit which is more difficult, it's a general context for Ukraine which is becoming more difficult, not only in the United States, also in Europe. The slow pace of the counteroffensive, although certainly there's still more to come before winter sets in, is something which has discouraged some publics and has given space to questions about how long will this war continue. And it has certainly dampened the hope that there will be one counteroffensive successful this year, and then the war might somehow get to an end. So it is the international context that has changed. It is the counteroffensive that makes it more difficult. And that is a challenge that Zelensky will face not only in Washington, but also in European capitals.
So, Liana, given that context, what does that mean for international support for Ukraine right now?
First of all, it means that allies, the United States and its allies, will have to prepare that support for Ukraine should not only be limited to this year, but that the counteroffensive will go on next year and possibly even the year after. So it is important to switch from this more short-term perspective and short-term hope for the counteroffensive, which was especially raised at the beginning of the year, an expectation that was raised then, to a more prolonged and structural help for Ukraine. And what that means is to make sure that budgetary support for Ukraine is anchored in long-term cycles and is not held hostage to short-term budgetary discussions, again, not only in Washington, but also in Europe. So Ukraine needs a reliable basis and not just month-to-month support and discussions.
Kori, what's your thought on this? Does there need to be an international reframing of the expectations and the perspective of what will come out of the current counteroffensive?
Yes, I think it was always unfair to Ukraine to put such enormous weight on the counteroffensive, especially since the deliberations among the free societies that are aiding Ukraine and the 6 to 8 month lag on weapons deliveries gave Russia the opportunity to build deep defensive positions in the territory of Ukraine that they occupy. So we bear some culpability for how slow the pace of the offensive has been for Ukraine. And again, the president should be helping Americans to understand that instead of just committing to, whatever it takes for as long as it takes. People want to know, and they're watching with real sympathy and anxiety, the suffering of Ukrainians. They want to know where this is headed, and the president should be doing a better job of that, as should other Western leaders.
Liana, do you think that this is also something that needs to be better communicated, as Corey just said?
Yeah, there is indeed a problem. I would entirely agree when it comes to the Western theory of victory. So the famous end game question, when and how will this end? So there has been no sufficient answer, both in the long term from Western allies, no commonly agreed upon answer. And also there has been no clear goal that was set for the counteroffensive to which especially weapon supplies could be tailored. And that may be prudent because we see that you can't predict what is happening on the battlefield. But on the other hand, it's also more difficult to communicate to publics if the message is just as long as it takes, because the question is, how will this end? What is the plan to end this, and how long will it take? So this is certainly a problem in the narrative, not only for Ukraine, but also for Ukraine supporters, which is difficult to address, but which will become even stronger in the next year.
All right. Really interesting perspectives there. Liana Fix, Fellow for Europe at the Council on Foreign Relations, and Kori Schake, Senior Fellow and Director of Foreign and Defense Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute. Great to have you on, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.